Hey everybody. So I have a previous video about rule of thirds composition, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth and talk about combining rule of thirds with rule of quadrants. Following this video, there will be other videos as well about different framing types. Let's first look at the rule of thirds. Here we have this gray rule of thirds, and in light gray, you might be able to see the quadrants rule right there. It cuts the frame in half horizontally and vertically. And using these in conjunction gives you a fairly nice set of framing options. You can see here the yellow and red mask that we're going to use as we look at a few sample images to talk about how rule of thirds works in different types of images. This first one is a standard prototypical rule of thirds type image. This is an architectural photo. And if we turn on the rule of thirds mask, you can see how it is that this image works with the rule of thirds. 1/3 of the image, this black foreground area right here, is underneath the 1/3 line almost perfectly. Over here, the lighthouse is adjacent to this 1/3 line fairly perfectly. Now you might be wondering with the red lines, which are the quadrant lines, what's going on with that? Well, you can see here that the gap in the clouds follows this horizontal quadrant line fairly closely. And while there's not anything definitive in this vertical quadrant line, the amount of image content which falls on either side of it is fairly close to even in terms of the lighthouse over here and the drama of the sky over here. This is one really good way, using the rule of thirds in these yellow lines with quadrants in these red lines, to deliver an image that follows two rules and the practices of both rules. And what the rule of thirds gives us a nice balanced image. Following quadrants gives us an unsettling and unbalanced image. And combining those two sets of rules together gives us a balanced image with a sense of imbalance. Let's take another look. This is a nature photo. And following the rule of thirds, you can see how these yellow lines line up with the tree here, spot on the rule of thirds. This rock, which is near a rule of thirds crossing, and this one over here, which is in this lower grouping over here, lower segment over here. Then in the top right up here, we have the flare from the sun that falls along-ish one of the vertical rule of thirds lines. We also can see here the land doesn't go very much above this rule of third line over here, and it runs roughly parallel along this segment right here with this rule of third line. But looking at how this works in rule of thirds along with quadrants, let's take a look at how it's divided vertically. Over here you can see that there is a heavier weighting of interest. We have two rocks and then the tree all on the left side. They're divided fairly evenly, with the tree being in the top left quadrant and the rocks being in the bottom left. Over here on the right, there's significantly less visual interest. We have grass over here, certainly, and a little bit of path. And over here we have clouds and sky. And what happens is the amount of visual interest on the left, which aligns with the rule of thirds grid, imbalances the overall image. You can see here, because the preponderance of visual interest is on the left half, and the preponderance of foreground is on the bottom half. Let's take a look at one more image and see how this works. This is a portrait. And let's take a look at the image first here, with the grids off. You can see that largely the subject is over here on the left, and the rock that he's standing on is also on the left. Now there is a large amount of slightly out of focus, distant scenery in the background for the rest of it, and then sky. You might already be able to kind of picture where we're going to go with this. On the rule of thirds, the subject in this and the rock he's standing on are all here almost exclusively in the left third of the image. The right 2/3 of the image are fairly heavily weighted towards scenery. If we cut the image along the quadrants, we can see that the horizon runs right along the middle fairly closely. And then if we cut it vertically, we can see that all of the subject information is over here on the left, looking out at this scenery area on the right. And what happens is that, again, we can see that the main area of interest is lined up with the subject over here, and that we create an imbalance by following a quadrant division as well. Now, you might be wondering how it is that these images came to be. These were not crops. All three of these images are the original size. And one thing that I've created is a set of PDFs in both letter and JPEG you can download from various image formats that you can use to help frame as you pre-plan images, and there's a link to those in the description below. And what you can do is you can use those JPEGs, which look like this, or those PDFs rather, which look like this, to sketch out your images ahead of time. Or if you already have an image, you can look at it to see how your existing images line up with a rule of thirds and a quadrant division, to try and get a better idea for the next time you take a similar image of what you could do differently to help it align with the rule of thirds framing and be imbalanced by dividing it into quadrants. So this is one video in a series of videos about different framing techniques. We'll be taking a look at some of these other framing techniques in other videos, which are linked in the description below. If this video was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track. If you have any questions about these framing videos, please let me know. I'm more than happy to answer those for you. If this video series is helpful, please let me know, and I will make more videos about photography resources and tips and tricks as well. One last thing. Thank you guys for watching, and take great photos.